Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
It's good to be back.
This time we're headed to the Tullamore Trench.
That's right, a newly charted region of space, and it seems like there's already some trouble brewing there for the Federation.
Yeah, things are a little more complicated than usual this time.
Oh, definitely. This is not a straightforward conflict between two sides. We've got a whole bunch of factions involved, all with their own agendas.
Romulans,
Cardassians.
Klingons, Ferengi, independent groups, you name it.
Everyone seems to want a piece of the Tullamore Trench.
So how do we even begin to make sense of this mess?
Well, like always, we've got our trusty sources, log entries, diplomatic messages, even some public broadcasts.
Bits and pieces of the puzzle scattered everywhere.
Exactly, and it's our job to put them together and figure out what's really going on.
So put on your detective hats, folks, because we're going deep into the Tullamore Trench.
Right into the thick of it.
And at the heart of all this is Admiral Mackenzie.
Yes, Mackenzie, the Federation's point man in the Tullamore Trench.
He's got his work cut out for him, though, trying to establish a Federation presence there.
Yeah, his logs paint a pretty frustrating picture. He's dealing with a severe lack of resources, and it seems like Starfleet Command isn't exactly making things easy for him.
Yeah, a lot of bureaucratic red tape, it sounds like.
Exactly. And then there's the whole issue with the Andromeda Trade Hub.
The Federation's attempt to establish a foothold in the region.
Precisely, but from what we can gather, it's barely operational.
So is the Federation intentionally neglecting this region, despite its obvious strategic importance?
That's a good question, and one that we'll have to keep in mind as we dig deeper.
Right, and then there's Captain Wieneke.
Mackenzie's adjutant.
Yeah, at first she seemed quite skeptical of Mackenzie's approach, but it looks like she's starting to see another side to him now.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Wieneke was originally given command of the USS Venture.
A pretty plum assignment.
And suddenly she's reassigned to be an adjutant.
Makes you wonder if there's more to this story.
Oh, there's always more to the story.
Especially when you've got a massive unidentified fleet lurking in the shadows.
Oh, yes. The whispers of this phantom fleet have been circulating for a while now.
And the warp signatures suggest we're not just dealing with one faction here.
It's a real mixed bag, which makes it all the more intriguing.
And then there's the Federation's subspace relay station in the Kragenmoor Verwerfen.
That region connected to the Tullamore Trench by a wormhole.
And suddenly, communications with Starfleet Command go dark.
Sabotage, they claim, but the timing seems awfully convenient, doesn't it?
Almost as if someone's trying to isolate the Federation in the Tullamore Trench.
Now, who would want to do that?
I have a feeling we're about to find out.
This is starting to feel like a conspiracy thriller.
One with very high stakes.
Absolutely. And to make matters even more complicated, we have the arrival of Fleet Admiral Ross.
Oh, Ross, he always seems to stir things up.
He certainly does. He shows up with the 8th Fleet and immediately makes his presence known by attacking a Romulan convoy.
Which is decidedly not the Federation style.
Understatement of the year, Ross's actions are in direct contradiction to the Federation's supposed commitment to peaceful diplomacy.
And this is causing some serious internal friction within Starfleet.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of officers are questioning Ross's motives and wondering what this means for the Federation's principles.
And caught in the middle of all this is Commodore Sokar,
the Vulcan officer in charge of strategic planning on the USS Hera.
the Federation's mobile headquarters in the Tullamore Trench.
Sokar is a cautious and logical thinker by nature, which puts him at odds with Ross's more aggressive tactics.
This tension within the Federation is yet another layer of complexity to this already tangled web.
It makes you wonder if there's something else at play here, some hidden agenda or ulterior motive.
And we can't forget about the Romulans.
Never a dull moment with those guys.
Senator Nira, a Romulan figure, initially confronts Mackenzie, but then offers her help.
Classic Romulan double game.
Always keeping us guessing.
Their actions are a constant source of mystery. One minute, they're hostile. The next, they're offering assistance.
So are they friend or foe?
Or maybe a little bit of both.
I guess we'll just have to unravel that mystery as we go deeper into this deep dive.
The Tullamore Trench is full of surprises.
Buckle up, folks. It's going to be a wild ride.
Welcome back to the Tullamore Trench.
Yeah, where we left off, things were not looking so good for the Federation.
Not so good is an understatement, I'd say.
A rogue fleet admiral.
Broken alliances.
And enough unanswered questions to fill a data archive.
So let's pick up where we left off and take a closer look at Admiral Mackenzie's actions.
Specifically, his decision to surrender to the Romulans.
Right on the surface, it seems like a terrible move.
The worst possible move you could make.
But remember, Mackenzie's been backed into a corner here.
He's been lied to, manipulated,
Abandoned by his own people.
facing a potential war on multiple fronts.
So maybe his surrender isn't an act of desperation?
But a calculated gamble.
Exactly. He's calling Ross's bluff.
By surrendering to the Romulans, he's forcing them to show their hand.
Either they accept responsibility for the conflict that Ross started.
Or they expose Ross as a rogue agent and risk the wrath of the rest of the Federation.
It's a high-stakes game for sure.
But Mackenzie's not just playing against the Romulans.
Right. He's also sending a message to the other powers in the Tullamore Trench.
The ones who are caught in the middle of this escalating conflict.
He's saying, look, the Federation isn't the enemy here.
We're all being manipulated by Ross.
In his final message, the Federation will end this war.
That's a powerful statement.
It's a promise to his own people.
And a warning to his enemies.
But will it be enough?
That's the big question.
We also have to consider how the other players in the Tullamore Trench are reacting to all this.
The Klingons, the Ferengis, the Cardassians.
Unfortunately, our sources are pretty limited on that front.
We only get glimpses of their perspective.
But we can make some educated guesses based on what we know about them.
So let's start with the Klingons.
Always a fan favorite.
A warrior culture. They're probably watching this whole situation with keen interest.
Oh, absolutely. A weakened Federation could present an opportunity for them.
A chance to test their strength.
And maybe expand their influence.
But they're also pragmatic.
They might not want to get involved in a conflict that doesn't directly benefit them.
They could just sit back and watch the Federation and the Romulans weaken each other.
And then swoop in and pick up the pieces.
Speaking of picking up the pieces, what about the Ferengi?
Ah, yes, the Ferengi. They're probably already calculating the profits to be made from this whole mess.
Chaos equals opportunity for them.
Exactly. They might be supplying weapons to both sides.
Manipulating trade routes.
Maybe even engaging in some good old-fashioned war profiteering.
And what about the Cardassians?
They've got a long and complicated history with the Federation.
They're definitely not going to miss an opportunity to exploit this situation.
But they're also still recovering from the Dominion War.
They might not be ready for another major conflict.
It's a tough call. They could decide to support the Romulans.
Or maybe just play a more subtle game.
Using the chaos to advance their own interests without openly engaging in war.
So we've got a lot of moving pieces here.
A lot of potential for things to go very wrong.
The Tullamore Trench is like a powder keg right now.
And Mackenzie's surrender has just lit the fuse.
We're about to see some fireworks.
Buckle up.
Well, we're back, and the Tullamore Trench is still the most volatile place in the quadrant.
Feels like we're sitting on a warp core breach waiting to happen.
Mackenzie's surrender to the Romulans is the biggest gamble yet.
Could bring peace or all-out war, who knows?
So let's talk worst-case scenario. What's the worst that could happen here?
The Romulans could see this as a sign of weakness.
Take advantage and just invade the whole sector.
Exactly. And the Federation, they're spread thin already.
Couldn't put up much of a fight.
Not at all. And then you've got everyone else watching.
The Klingons, the Cardassians.
Even the Ferengi.
All looking for a chance to grab some power or territory.
Total chaos, basically.
Okay, so that's the doomsday scenario.
Yeah.
What about a more optimistic take on this? Is there any chance this could actually work out for the Federation?
Well, there's always a chance, right? The Romulans, they're not always warmongers.
Maybe they see the logic in accepting Mackenzie's surrender.
A long war would be costly, unpredictable.
And it could expose Ross for what he really is.
A rogue agent acting without authorization.
Could discredit him completely.
Undermine his support within the Eighth Fleet.
Give the Federation a chance to regain control.
That's the hope, anyway.
And maybe Mackenzie's message resonated with the other powers in the region.
Appealing to their sense of self-preservation.
Maybe they'll see the wisdom in banding together against Ross.
Form a coalition to prevent a wider war.
So there's hope then. Maybe a glimmer of light at the end of this very dark tunnel.
Maybe, but hope isn't enough. The Federation needs to act decisively.
Condemn Ross.
Reaffirm their commitment to peace.
Rebuild those fractured alliances.
A lot of work to do.
And what about Mackenzie stuck with the Romulans? What's his next move?
He's got to convince them he's sincere.
That this surrender wasn't just a trick.
He needs to expose Ross' rally support for the Federation, prevent a war, all while being a captive.
Sounds like a lot for one man to handle.
It is. But Mackenzie, he's a smart guy. He's a survivor.
We've seen him in action.
Never underestimate Admiral Mackenzie.
So, big takeaway time.
Yeah.
What's the one thing we should remember from this whole deep dive into the Tullamore Trench?
It's a dangerous place, full of potential, but also full of risk.
The Federation's mission there is hanging by a thread.
Mackenzie's surrender has thrown everything into disarray.
But maybe, just maybe, it's also created an opportunity.
A chance for the Federation to show what they're really made of.
Reaffirm their values, rebuild their alliances, and work towards a more peaceful future for the Tullamore Trench.
It's a story of intrigue, betrayal, courage, and a whole lot of hope.
And as we've seen, it's still unfolding. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking the truth, because who knows what's going to happen next in the Tullamore Trench.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.